Hello. I shall, for purposes of brevity and for also purposes of you understanding me better, I shall speak English. I know the translators here are really good. I've just been listening to them, so I can vouch for their professionalism. I've been here a long time. I mean, many of you will know me. I've been in this industry, in this city, for 20 years. I started out in the furniture industry with a large systems furniture company. I was represented here before forming Sudbury Heights about 15 years ago. So I've been here a long time. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of things change. That's what everybody asks me when they find out I've been here for so long. Well, you must have seen some changes. Well, I have. Sadly, not in offices. Because offices, generally, office design, so much has stayed the same. Despite the fact, in fact, that we've just been through a period, and you see this a lot. In fact, it started, I think, in the early 90s, when office furniture companies, I think, started here, but architects as well chipped in, when there were a whole series of office trends and fads, people telling you how you should work, how your office should be designed, the things that will revolutionise your working life and make the office something completely different to how it had ever been before. And you may remember, I remember when I first started working in this industry, hotelling and hot desking was a thing that was going to really take over the world. Nobody would have a desk anymore. We would all share a desk. We'd come into the office, we'd log on to some terminal, and it would show where we're going to work that day. We'd take our little caddy storage unit, and we'd take it to some desk, and we'd sit down there, and we'd have a productive working day. We'd work next to different people every day. Every day we'd be working in a different small environment. Of course, it never really took off. It never took off at all, in fact. The one company I know, it was our client, that really pioneered this was Sun Microsystems. They were subsequently bought out. But they really pioneered hot desking, and they introduced it throughout all their global locations, and then ditched it within 2 years because it was profoundly unpopular. Nobody wanted it. Nobody wanted to come in and sit at a different desk every day. Nobody wanted to scramble for their favourite workstation. Nobody wanted it. So you don't hear quite so much about that anymore, but you hear a lot about other fashions and fads. And you may hear some of them over the next few days, and I hear a lot of them. Every furniture presentation I have includes one or other, usually at least two or more, of these things on the screen in front of you. Collaborative working is another one. I mean, from my understanding, that just means that you should work together, and the workstations and the office design that you develop should basically facilitate collaboration, whether it does or whether it doesn't. Design for innovation, another key phrase you'll hear and you'll see a lot in white papers by architects and furniture companies nowadays. Once again, it means that the actual slogan gives you more sense than the explanation does. It basically means that your furniture layout, your layout of your office should facilitate innovation. Well, that's not news to me. I don't know any business leader that wouldn't want their workers to work collaboratively or work in a way that would promote innovation. I don't know any particular furniture layout that guarantees that for a business. If there is a furniture layout that anybody knows of here that can guarantee innovation and collaboration, then please do tell me, because I've never seen one. Mobile working is another one. Mobile working, everybody was going to work outside their offices. Do you remember that? Nobody was going to work inside offices. Offices are almost going to die out. We're all going to work outside. Mobile, maybe from home, maybe from our cars, maybe from different other mobile locations. Of course, that never really took off at all, and that was, to be fair, that was only half promoted. It was only half promoted because the sad thing, the ironic thing about mobile working as a concept promoted by the office design industry is it's cannibalistic. It destroys their own business. The more you have mobile work, the more people don't work in an office, the less furniture you'll sell, the less real estate you'll lease, the less office space you'll take. There'll be less need for people like me. I hate that sort of thing. Less work for people like me, less work for the architects, etc. Distributed work is the latest one. I don't know. You may have heard this recently. I've only come across it the last 2 or 3 years. It simply means that work is distributed. My understanding is if somebody knows some of the magic that underlies that concept, please do explain it to me, because it seems to me another fashion or a fad. The strange thing is, during the time that all of these fashions and fads have been promoted over the past 20 years, fundamental, revolutionary, far-reaching changes have occurred in the way we work and the way we use technology to work. You know, when I first came here, it wasn't long after people started using PCs in offices. You think that would be a fairly revolutionary development for office design. We'll see how much that affected it. The internet. You know, my son said to me the other day, you know, did I have a computer when I was his age? And I said, no, I didn't have a computer when I was your age. And he said, how did you send your email? The fact that you don't laugh at that is either, in fact, it's not funny or else it's not being translated right. But, you know, he did say that, and there is this notion that life was different before the internet. But no, the internet has fundamentally changed the way we work. Especially if you spend half your time at work on Facebook, you'll find it has. Mobile phones. I mean, you know this list. You know what I'm going to go through. All of these things have fundamentally changed the way our daily lives are structured. What we do, how we work, what we do when we arrive in the morning at work, how we spend our leisure time, our coffee breaks, our lunchtime at work, how we communicate with our colleagues, how we reach out to our potential clients, how we give presentations, how we do our marketing. These have revolutionised everything about the way we work. The way we work is not the same as it was in the 1950s. It's fundamentally different. It's fundamentally different to the way it was in the 1960s. It's fundamentally different to the way it was in the 1970s or the early 80s. So that's the first premise I ask you to accept. Technology has revolutionised our life. It's fundamentally changed the very premise of the way we work. How has that affected the offices we work in? Let's look. I was very interested about this because I've spent 20 years, as I say, listening to presentations, hearing people speak about all of the fashions and fads that I spoke about earlier on. And I've always very frustrated because I'm dreadfully bored. I mean, there's a whole section of my life, my working life, that bores me dreadfully. You know, I go around offices every day, and we can all pretend to be so excited about every office we go in. But you know, and I know, and everybody around this table will secretly admit that 9 out of 10 offices you go in are like every other office you go in. They're boring. They're designed in the same way, with more or less the same furniture, with more or less designed from the same materials, no matter who the architect is, or no matter where it is, or what city it's in. So I asked a number of people that I know around the market, around the world, architects we've worked with, furniture companies, other people, global companies, to show me some designs of offices, some designs of offices from the 1950s, from the 1960s, from the 1970s and 80s. And one thing that really struck me is that nobody had them. Nobody had these designs. Nobody had them, nobody kept them. And there was one reason for that, a genuine reason, and that reason was, of course, these things weren't padded up. You know, it was before the age of AutoCAD, so they weren't available in electronic means. But when you ask people that are responsible for predicting the future of work and designing offices and how they're going to be, how can they predict how offices will develop in the next 5 to 10 years without basically understanding how they've developed over the past 50 years? They were a little bit clueless and difficult and found it difficult to explain. I mean, it's like me trying to predict what the future of Russia would be without me knowing anything about Russia's history over the past 100 years. I know nothing about Russia's history over the past 100 years, but I'll tell you what's going to happen over the next 20. It's not possible. It's a position of ignorance that you start out on. So I really made it my effort made it my work over the last few months to search out layouts and designs from offices dating back to the 1950s. And it really was a difficult job. Until I found this guy. Now this guy is not a household name. He seems to have more consonants in his name than vowels, and very difficult to pronounce. But Ermo Shpuza. He's Associate Professor of Architecture at Georgia Tech. He's the one person I found that's actually made it his purpose in life to collect office designs more than 20 years old. So he's got office designs that have been carried up from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, etc. And he's been really helpful. This guy's a really helpful guy. If any of you contact him, I can pass you his email address. He's a really nice guy, and he passed me a lot of information, some of which I've used in this presentation. Now, what I've done to try and illustrate. Now, you remember the first premise I asked you to accept was that technology has fundamentally changed our lives, fundamentally affected, in every way, our working practices. Now I'll ask you to accept one other thing, which is it's barely changed our offices at all in that time. I'm going to go through a number of examples, and I will ask you to tell me, in each example, what decade the office I'm showing you comes from. Now, it could come from the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, or the 2000s. All I'm going to ask you is to guess what decade these offices were designed in. Ilya's got his microphone, so he's going to guess already. Ilya. Just on?
From 90s.
Good 90s. Anybody else? Earlier, you think? Earlier. Who thinks earlier?
I think we are much earlier.
You think much earlier?
So I would say 70s, 80s.
70s, 80s. Actually, McDonald's HQ was actually designed in the 1990s, 1997. It's in Milan. Interesting. You see, it's got a high percentage of open plan space, certain closed offices, some obviously a degree of collaborative space, meeting rooms, access areas, reception area, etc. Try this one. What decade do you think that comes from? 1950s, 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000? You see it's got a lot of open plan space, all very modern in many ways, a lot of meeting rooms, etc. What decade do you think that comes from? Anybody? Sorry?
What
country? I think this is the United States. I'll tell you exactly. Yes, it is. This is from the US. Most of these are from the US. Not all, but some of them are. The last one was from Italy. When do you think? 60s, says Mark. 70s. 70s, that's interesting. I would have thought you'd have said later than that. Because this...
No mobile partitions, you see.
There's a lot of open plan space there.
We just need to ask Maya, the Versailles and so on.
19...
started to produce mobile partitions.
That's 1955. 1955, that's Chad Day, the advertising company in New York. That's before the age of PCs, the internet, mobile phones, flat screen computers, tablet computers. What about this? I'm not going to go on too long with this, I hope to just to prove my point with a few. What about this? What decade do you think that's from?
20s.
2000, you think? 90s again, that's Saudi Arabia. Apicor, designed by DGW. What about this? That's an interesting one, isn't it? An awful lot of open plan space. What do you think? Ilya, you got any ideas?
I can't imagine the name of the company with such a lot of...
I know, terrible, isn't it?
offices.
A terrible.
No open space, nothing, you know.
It's a terrible design. Do you like that design?
No, I don't like it.
You think that would be an innovative company that had an office like that?
I can't see my place in this office.
Would you say it would be a creative company that had an office like that?
I think it's, you know, it's like a telephone company where each telephone is need to be, to have a separate place, you know.
$1980, Apple. Let's move on. Not many more to go. What about this one? What decade do you think that is? 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000?
I think it's Samsung office now.
It could be. This is an interesting one, I thought. Yeah, I found this interesting. It's an interesting office, big use of furniture, maybe a clue. What decade do you think that is? Anybody? 60s, 70s, I heard. That's the offices of Steelcase in Grand Rapids. They died in 1994. I'll do one more for this. What about this? What decade do you think that was designed in?
I think it's something like IT company, no?
I'm not asking what industry the company's in.
I think it's not for a long time before. It's maybe 10, 20 years before.
Anybody else? Anderson Consulting, 1976. You know, the guy that I spoke about from Georgia Tech, very interesting chap. He's done a lot of research, not just on 7 examples, but from 100, 200 examples. He produced a PhD thesis on this subject. And basically he measured the percentage of open plan space, percentages of closed offices, percentages of collaborative space. Collaborative is not such a good word here because it encompasses access, reception areas, meeting rooms, etc. But this is his analysis of that, showing the expansion, the slow expansion of open plan space to the 1990s, then the amount of open plan space recedes. I've added on to this a few lines from where fundamental technological changes have taken place, which should, by rights, revolutionise the office design industry. Perfect from the start. You know, has anybody seen that? There's a cartoon, I think. It's a joke cartoon about Lada cars. I don't know if you've seen it. On the top, it's got a BMW, and it's got the BMW 1960, BMW 1970, BMW, and it's all different models. And obviously, BMW is improving and streamlining its models. And then it's got at the bottom Lada cars, 1950, 1960, all exactly the same. And it says Lada, perfect from the start. It's a great thing. It's a great thing. Office is perfect from the start. The thesis that I'm asking you to accept is that we all like to think in the office design industry. This is an office design event, and I applaud Sergey for organising it. We all like to think we're revolutionary and innovative. But what I'm arguing is the office design industry is profoundly conservative. In fact, you put in these numbers, soon you'll have a smartphone app that can design your offices. The real revolution in office design is nothing to do with our office architects, nothing to do with furniture companies, but to do with the technology. The technology that underpins it, the engineering design of the offices, the technology which revolutionises the type of work you do. And sadly, the office design industry has not taken a jot of attention to it. So we're still sitting in the same sort of offices, the same basic design layouts that we're sitting before even anybody used PCs. That's my argument. And there's so little out there to grasp, so little out there, real innovation to grasp. Instead, we get things like this. I took this from a furniture company, and I thought it's actually from Steelcase, but I'm not getting Steelcase by any means. This is an infographic from a recent white paper about the future of office design. I think this is amazing. I think this is one of the best infographics I've ever seen for meaninglessness. It means nothing. What they've done is they've grabbed a number of buzz phrases, they've put them in circles and put arrows pointed in both directions around, with arrows going in and out. If anybody can explain this to me in any sort of legible way, then I will give them $100 today. It's total nonsense. It's hot air. I've read the white paper that underpins this. It's also total hot air. I think the conclusion is we should design offices that people want to work in. Well. Wow, you're going to knock me down with a feather, as they say in London. Where do people want to work? Well, a recent survey, it was a very small survey, an American journal, suggested that this was the office that most people would find ideal to work in. You see the office, I'd like to work in that office. That's a really nice office.
It's your office.
It's not my office, sadly. It's not.
It's your office, no?
Believe me, you don't want to see my office. But this is the office that most people want to work in. You know, it's very nice. You've got your desk there, your little mahogany shrine. You've got some nice, like Kimball chairs. You've got a nice soft seating area, cocktail cabinet on your left. That's an office that was commonplace in the advertising industry in the 1950s. In fact, it's from the US television series Mad Men. Everybody wants to be those people. Everybody wants to work in that office. Everybody wants a secretary like that. That seems to be the ideal office for those people. And yet, we're still designing the same offices. We're not paying attention to the fundamental and revolutionary changes that technology has wrought. We're still designing the same sort of things, the same open plan offices, the same footprints, without any account taken of the real innovative people in our industry, which are not the architects but the designers. This is my own personal view. I do to be provocative, so don't kill me. Especially the architects in front of me that I work with on a day-to-day basis. Nothing personal. As I say, I speak personally, not on behalf of my company, and certainly not on behalf of the Moscow Construction and Fit Out Association, which this discussion is allied with. It's a personal view. My view is that we need new ideas. We need new ideas in office design. And nothing that I've heard that's around nowadays, not even Google with their plant walls and table tennis tables, fundamentally changes the paradigm of what an office could be, and that we should take a leaf from the book of the technologists that fundamentally expanded our knowledge and capabilities to work all the different things. That's all I've got to say. Thank you very much.